And we're live, I believe. Let me just check back over here. Bring that to the front. G'day everyone, we're just in a bit of pre-show. Back for our usual Friday show. So if you are watching live now, pop into the live chat to say hi. I'm going to give it 5 minutes or so. Well, there is around 5-6 minutes or so to have a bit of a pre-chat. Let me know what you're up to. Let me make sure that that's off. Let me know what you're up to, what you're doing on the weekend. So let's see who's here in the chat. So Dana's here. G'day Dana. Langston saying hello from CA. Gary's saying hello from NS. Barry is saying good morning, David. Nivak is saying greetings everyone as well. So we start to pop in. I made a mistake last week. G'day Gerald. I made a mistake last week. I did say that I was shooting the live video wedding, or the video wedding last week. It's actually tomorrow. So I'm shooting my first true full-on video wedding tomorrow where I'm not the photographer. It's going to be really interesting to step back a little bit and do something different. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be really interesting. And also to watch how another photographer works is going to be fun as well. So can't wait for that. So something a little bit different for me. I am still drinking the real coffee. Maybe next week I might start drinking the Corona coffee because it is starting to warm up now. Let's see who else is come in. Heroes say, what's up, dudes? Ronnie says, Belgium still awake. Good to see you still awake. Ronnie must be late over there. John is saying hello. Donald saying hello from Texas. Raining here this evening. Alexander said, hi, David. Jeff is saying hello from Vegas. Hopefully you're going to meet up with us, Jeff, when we come to Vegas in Feb. Chris said, hello, David. Windy and warm with fires in Los Angeles. Hope you're okay. Still a Corona day. Philip says, hey, shooting a small beach wedding this weekend. Cool, Philip. That'll be nice. Can you give a brief rundown of your lighting? Are you talking about for the wedding guy with the camera, or are you talking about what I'm using now? Johnny AMV said, hi, Ronnie. Oh, okay, that's talking to each other. Leslie saying, hi, David. G'day. Big hi from all of Croydon. Change in the weather today. Yeah, I know. It's a bit cooler today, Leslie. Yesterday was so warm. We were mid-30s yesterday Celsius, and today it's going to be 23. So we've had a big drop. I believe the wedding tomorrow is going to be quite cool, actually. So I'm hoping it's not going to be raining. So good to see you from Croydon, Leslie. John said, by the way, David, 11 is the home base of Stella. Oh, okay. I love Stella. Ben said, hey, David, I'm shooting my first wedding on Sony this weekend. Woohoo! That'll be cool, Ben. Good luck with that. I'm sure you're going to go fine. Oh, now, yeah, well, I've just got I'll show you the type of lighting I'm using. Hang on for a sec. I've got a couple of these. So I'm using one of these, which is just above me up there above the camera on that side. That's the only lighting that I'm using. So that's just giving me fill from this side. I'll just put this down. These are amazing, these LED panels. You know, they're so small and narrow. They connect to a box. Just let me put that down there. They connect, I don't know whether I can show this or not. Let me just see if I can bring it in. Let me go full screen. Let's see if I can just get it in. Oh, yeah, so they connect to this box through here. That's how I control it. So I can control the color temperature and also the dimmer. This is a Soonwell. So this is the Soonwell FB21 that I'm using. So it's slightly smaller than the one that I was just showing you a second ago over there. But these are fantastic because there's no flickering involved. You can change the color temperature. And the red lights that you're seeing around me, I'm just using hue lights. So I've got 4 hue lights that are up above me over here. I won't move the camera, but there's 4 just above me there. There's a couple angled towards the front of the room and there's a couple angled towards the back. And the light strip that you see at the back, I've got 1 hue down the bottom down there. and I've also got light strips underneath the TV. You can only just see the TV, which is above me there. That's where clients view all my work that I show, that sort of stuff. So that's the lighting that I've used. And like I said, the light itself just has a grid on it, so because I don't want it to spread to the rest of the room, and it also does have the diffusion on there as well, so it keeps it so it's reasonably soft. Oops. So that's what I'm using for my lighting. Leslie said, I read that today. Hi, Fall from Croydon, changing the weather. Yeah, I read that one. Lakeson said, evening, everyone. Mike said, Colorado Rocky Mountains final back in the house. Guy with the camera said, thanks, no worries. Langston said, I could really use some of those for Vegas. What are you talking about, those lights, Langston? Yeah, they're really good because they're really portable. You can also use the V-mount batteries on them, so you can run them portable as well. I've got that one plugged into the wall, but I do have V-mount versions of that I can stick on as well, which, they're just fantastic. Glad to see the black hole is still around. Yeah, the black hole is around there at the back there. Click on that thumbs up. Yeah, thanks so much for saying that. Hi from Scotland, only 6 likes. Come on, chaps. Now, thanks so much, Scots, for saying that. So, interesting news. So I'll let you know how I go on the wedding. It's going to be, like I said, the first time I've shot a wedding videography. I've always done it as Fusion, so this time might be a bit easier for me because I don't have to worry about the film side of things, or the still side. I'm only just going to do the videography. So I'll have probably a couple of cameras on tripods, and then I'll also use my gimbal as well, and I'll be running around sort of doing stuff with the gimbal. I'll probably use the A9 on a gimbal, because I love that camera so much for tracking and things like that. And then I'll have an A7 III and a A6-400 on 2 other tripods, so I can get multiple angles and things like that. So it should be an awful lot of fun. So let's continue. Now, today we've got a stack of news. Now, there's not much Sony news, unfortunately, at this stage, so I have got some we're going to start with, which is the Tamron lenses that we'll discuss. Then I'm just going to talk to you about some general camera knowledge, things like the new Canon releases, Canon EOS R, the Fuji X-Pro3 we'll discuss as well, Sigma lens for Sony, but there's just not much Sony rumours around at the moment or news, so we can only do what we've got, I suppose. So let me just quit this pre-show. How are we going for time? Yeah, we're just about ready for time. Let me quit this pre-show, and I'm going to just go to live, and we'll be there in a second. Now let me put the timer on. I've just got to add 5 minutes, I think. How long have we been on? 7 minutes. Let me just mark that down. Okay, so let me just go to the Ocean Images thing, and we'll start the show, guys. Well, g'day everyone. Starting our usual Sony News Alpha Rumours show, but like I just said, there's not much Sony news at the moment. It's been fairly quiet on the Sony front. I'm going to talk about the Tamron lenses to start with today, and also the Sigma 35 1.2. We can have a quick look at that. Apart from that, though, we're just going to discuss some other camera releases that are out there. Thought we'd just share parts of that. I am, if anyone is local and they're going to the Sony show tonight, Sony are having their, I think it was their yearly print awards show in Melbourne tonight. So I am going. I think it starts from 6:30 till 9:30. So if anyone is going, please pop over and say hi. Love to see you, have a quick chat. So Kerry and myself will be there this evening, so that should be fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, there's some nibblies and stuff like that you'll get there as well, so why not? So let's get stuck into the stories today, because we've got quite a bit to get through on. I'm just reading what Sony News Canon Edition Langston said. Yep, there's not much Sony news today, though, unfortunately. It'll happen again, but just not at the moment. All right, so let's get stuck into it, because I've got Tamron. Let me put down here Tamron Lenses 104, 147. So let's look at ththese lenses, because I noticed Tamron now have announced the lenses that are going to be released. I'll probably get these eventually, whenever they're available in Australia. There's the 20mm 2.8, there's the 24 2.8, and there's also the 35 2.8. There also is this one, which I'll talk about in a second, which is the 70 to 180. But I thought that we'd talk about this as well, because I think there's some definite positives about these lenses. If you're trying to get into the Sony realm cheaply, because these are only, around $300, I believe, you could get a great range of primes for really not much money at all, if you look at how much other lenses cost. And I think the build quality and the results of these lenses will be fantastic. Like I said, I'll let you know when I test them myself. I'm a little bit torn, though, about these ones, I have to be honest, because I think looking at the focal lengths and the aperture of what these lenses are, from my perspective, I'd prefer to buy the 17 to 28 and the 28 to 75. That's probably just how I would prefer to go in, because they're still 2.8 lenses, and then you've got all of these focal ranges covered inside of that range, in fact a little bit wider. But I suppose if you can't afford the 17 to 28 or the 28 to 75, these could be really nice lenses to take around. I mean, 35 is a great focal length, particularly if you're traveling and you want to do street photography and you want to travel very light. And these lenses will be incredibly light. Are they saying what the weight is on these? Let me just have a quick look. Someone may know even in the chat. I'm just trying to see if it actually mentions the light, how light they are. I think they were only 200 grams or something. They were some ridiculous light weight. I can't find it. Someone in the chat may be able to help me if they've seen how much these the weight of these things are. But they have got some interesting things, like most of the Sony lenses. They are getting close to a macro, so you can do almost macro shots with these lenses. Which is very nice as well. These lenses would be fantastic if you wanted to stick them on a gimbal. So, if you wanted to put, say, the 20 or the 24, they would be fantastic lenses on a gimbal. Really nice and wide. And in fact, I love my 24 on the gimbal, so I do love using this on a gimbal as well. This is the GM24. I just like that focal length. In fact, I sold my 35. I had two of them. I had the 35 1.4, and I also had the 35 2.8 Sony lens, which are crazy expensive compared to what these Tamron lenses will be. And the 35 was a 2.8. That was the small Sony lens, was a 2.8. So these are probably going to be sort of similar in that realm. So they're only 220 grams, yeah. So it is, it's thanks for that, guy with the camera. So they are super lenses for gimbals and for travel. They really are. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to get one, I may. I mean, I think out of all of these, I probably would get the 20mm. Looking at that focal length for me, I've already got the 24 for my this Sony G Master. I've already got that. So I probably would get the 20 or the 35 if I was going to get a couple of these lenses. So look, yes, I mean, I can understand why they've done it. They wanted to keep the size down to a minimal size. They've still all got the same filter thread, which is 67mm, and I have to really commend Tamron in doing that, because you only have to buy one set of filters, and then those sets of filters can be used across their complete range of lenses, even the 70 to 180, which is fantastic if you think about how you could do that. So you don't need multiple ND filters if you're doing video and things like that, and that's fantastic. I think the build quality, like I said. Oh, my Tamron's in the other room. The Tamron is amazing, the build quality, even though it is that more plasticky material, they seem to be very good material, and it doesn't scratch and dent and things like that, and I'm amazed how well my Tamron lenses are. So, I think that's fantastic. Like I said, I think if I wanted to travel very minimalistically, that may be why I picked one of these up, particularly at that price range that these are being offered. But so that's sort of interesting in itself. So I think those lenses are going to be great. Like I said, I'll probably get them to do testing, but I'm not as excited about those as I am excited about the next lens, which is this one. This lens does excite me. Now, I know a lot of people are saying yes, but it's not a 200mm lens. and it also doesn't have IBIS. And I can understand that, and they've probably had to do that to keep the cost down and also the size. And in a way, I'm sort of glad now that they're doing that. I spoke to Gerald yesterday. We were talking about the Canon, and he was saying that the Canon 1D-X didn't have IBIS in it. And I said yes or no. And I said, look, I was really angry when Sony brought out the A6400. And I was totally against that due to the fact that it had IBIS, but I ended up buying it. And due to the fact that I use that now on a gimbal all the time, I don't mind it at all, in fact. And I'm glad it kept the price down. And I like it. And it's not that I really ever have issues when I'm shooting stills anyway without IBIS. I just up the shutter speed a little bit, and then it can make a difference if you're dealing with low light though. But if I'm doing video, I'm going to stick it straight on a gimbal. Now this 70 to 180, you would be able to put on a gimbal because it's got that same filter thread that we had before, which is the 67mm. It's made of that same material that the other lenses are, so it's going to be very, very robust as well. I'm just seeing if it mentions anything about that. They're saying this will probably be released sometime in 2020, so it's probably going to come out in the first quarter of 2020, I would think. Let me just see down here where it talks about the 70 to 180. I don't think it's talking about anything about that really there. It's just saying, all that being said, we are pleased to be showcasing the primes at the booth at Photo Plus. So if you are going to Photo Plus, you will be able to see these lenses actually there this year while making sure the 70-180 stays tantalizingly under glass. It's weather sealed too, but there's so much to drool over one lens can handle. It's saying check out the images attached, so there are some images attached that you can see, and I'll put these all down below so you can have a look, and they'll have more information on that 70 to 180 as it becomes available. For now, our friends, we're saying well enough on our own. In other words, that's really all they're going to be saying about the 70 to 200 at this stage. This is probably one that I'm going to buy, and once I've tested this, like I said, I will get a test unit of this. We don't know what price that's going to be yet, John. I was just looking at your comment. It's certainly going to be an awful lot cheaper, though, than the 70 to 200 GM. And it probably will be cheaper than the 70 to 200 f4 that I've got. I may sell my 70 to 200 f4 and buy this. Now, the reason why I may do that is because this is a 2.8 lens. I love the 70 to 200 f4 due to the weight and the size of that lens. That's the thing that I've always loved about it. Yes, it's an f4, and if I go under very low light conditions, I just have to bump up the ISO. So this could be a really good compromise because it's going to be very small. It will be small, I would say, because that's just what they've done. It looks. Oh, I'll show you the size in a minute, actually. If we look at the size compared to where are we here? Where was that one? Oh, here. So if you look at the size that this actually is, you can see that it's smaller than the 70 to 200 f4. So it's going to be smaller and lighter than that. And I love the 70 to 200 f4 due to the size and weight that actually is. So I think this may be a no-brainer for me. I'm going to get the 2.8 aperture. Yes, I'm going to lose out slightly in the long end, but you know, I mean, it's 10% difference basically if you're looking between the 180 and the 70 to 200. So I'm really interested to try this out, and I'll let you know honestly when I try it. I mean, I might compare it to my 70 to 200 f4, and you can have a look at the results and quality difference between the two. I may not be able to do that initially. It depends when I get this, because if I get the lens with beta software, they may not let me challenge it against another lens, and that's sometimes what can happen with reviewing the lenses very early. It just depends when I get the lens off Tamron. If I get the lens early enough, late enough, sort of closer to release, it might have the full version of the firmware, and then I can test it against anything, and they don't hold me back. If it's a beta firmware that is fairly new, they usually won't let me do sharpness tests and things like that until the firmware comes out more sort of to the final release a little bit later on. But, you know, I will, like I said, I will be getting versions of this to test for you guys. It's just a matter of when. I'm not so fussed, to be completely honest, about testing these ones. I mean, I probably will still do that if Tamron give me the opportunity to do it, but I'm not as fussed about those lenses as I am about using the 70 to 180 prime, because this particularly is the one that I'm interested in purchasing. So I'm really excited about trying that one. And if it does work well enough for me, I will sell my 70 to 200 f4. I'd be interested to know what a lot of you guys think. Like, yes, you do have to understand that you haven't got IBIS in the lens, whereas the 70 to 200 f4 has, and so has the G Master. But you have got stabilization in the cameras, the newer ones anyway, like your A7 III, the A7R4, the A7R3, etc. all have in-body stabilization. And as long as you up your shutter speed enough to combat any shake that you get, you will be fine. I mean, you know, we've got cameras that, like I was just talking to Ben yesterday, he was talking about his lenses. He has a Nikon D810 and he's using his 70 to 200 lenses. He does weddings and sort of sometimes he does motocross stuff and things like that. The only stabilization he's got is in his lens. Well, therefore, you know, that's all the stabilization he's got on his Nikon camera, and he doesn't get blurry images. He just makes sure he uses a 1/25th of a second or higher, and he says he can get perfectly stable shots. Now, with the internal Sony IBIS, you're going to be able to do the same thing. You'll still have the IBIS. That's the beauty of having it inside the camera. So if it is not in the lens, you've still got at least stabilization that's available. So I'll let you know how it works. Like I said, I'll test this fully when I get it. But I think you're going to find that it's probably going to be a really good release. You've got f2.8. I think the build quality will be the same as the others, which is fantastic. I think it's pretty exciting. And if you wanted to then get the Holy Trinity, you can buy the Tamron lens from the 17 to 28, 28 to 75, and probably the 70 to 180 for not much more than what you'd pay for one G Master 2.8 70 to 200. And that's probably what I think will be amazing to a lot of photographers. The Tamron lenses really have opened up a hell of a lot to beginning photographers, particularly that are getting into events and want to have those holy trinity of lenses that are available. You know, that's what most photographers have. I've sort of moved away from that now a little bit. I'm tending now to shoot mostly with 3 lenses, and I'm shooting with the 24 G Master, I'm shooting with the 85 Batis, and then I'm shooting with the 135 G Master, because I love that combination. And just occasionally, if I need a wider lens, I'll use my 16 to 35. And if I need something that's a little bit longer, I've got these in my bag, I will use the 70 to 200 f4 in case but I'm not grabbing them out much at all now. It's mostly that 24 GM, the 85 Batis, and the 135 are really the lenses that I'm using. And I'll probably do 90% of a wedding with those lenses. Oh, and sorry, I've always got on one camera because Kerry usually uses that, the Tamron 28 to 75, because she loves that focal range, and she'll be covering that all day on one camera. So yeah, they're the lenses that basically I'm using. So let's open up to the chat, because I'm just curious to see what you guys are saying about this. Cost for the 70 to 180 is $350. No, it's not. It'll be probably a little bit more expensive than the 28 to 75, Manny. I would say. Let me just go to where it's all happening. Where were we? Let's go down to here. All right, let's go from there. That's the one I want. Hero said the 70 to 180. Yep. Like I said, I may... I've got to move that because it's annoying how that's cropping. Let me just see if I can shift that while I'm just talking a little bit. Yeah, that's the one, like I said, I may, after I've tested it, I may sell my 70 to 200 f4. I've got to test it, though, first to see if it's as good as what I've got with that. These lenses are $350. Yeah, I mean, I think they're amazing value, Hero, for the smaller lenses. They really are amazing value, and Tamron have done a great job. If those lenses are really sharp, and you know what? I don't think Tamron now will release a lens that's not good. Tamron are making amazing lenses, so I would expect all of those primes to be really quite good. And I'm talking about, you know, pretty sharp. But let's wait until we see how they test. Guy with the camera said, pre-ordered the 20, can't wait to order the 70 to 180. Sanch said these 2.8 lenses are not fast enough. And that's the issue. I agree, Sanch, and that's the only thing I can say I'm a little bit disappointed. It would have been nice if they could have made them a 1.8. That's the part that I'm just sort of thinking, you know, the issue is, and that's why I said you may be better off if you can afford it to get the 17 to 28 and the 28 to 75, because that covers all of those focal lengths and you get more. And they're still 2.8. So that's the interesting thing about this. But they've priced these lenses at $350. So if you can't afford, because there's people that can't afford a 17 to 28, or they can't afford a 28 to 75, but they may be able to afford to get a, you know, a $350 prime that is probably going to have excellent results. And that would be much better than buying, say, a kit lens. So I think it's probably a winner. What they've done here is they've tried to keep the size down to be very small and the cost down as well. I'm sure Tamron eventually will release other lenses that are, you know, 1.4 and 1.8, etc. It's just a matter of time. Langston said, yeah, I was complaining about them not being fast enough, but that price is damn sexy. Yeah, and that's the thing, Langston, it is. I mean, it's a really good price. So if you just wanted to, say, have one and travel very light, you could just get one of those, throw it in the bag, and then you're right to go, you know, and just shoot street photography with a 35mm or the 24. At that price, like I said, it's incredible, really. Definitely need that 20, Hero's saying. Scott says, Gerald, hope there are no death with those twisters. Yeah, they've had some bad twisters over there. Gerald was having problems as well. I was hoping the Tamron 35 would have been a 1.4 or 1.8. Chris, it will happen, but I suppose like anything, you've just got to give Tamron time. I mean, really, what you think, the amount of lenses they've released in a short period of time now has really been quite amazing if you think about it. And they're also supporting Canon, they're also supporting Nikon as well. So I think what they've given us to be completely redesigned from the ground up, and they are designed differently to say what Sigma have done, etc. These are designed right from the ground up to be work on the Sony mirrorless cameras to be small, be minimalistic, be light. You can upgrade the firmware through the Sony camera, just like Sony lenses can. They really are fantastic. Hero said, forgot about the 17 to 35 on Tamron. Chris, these Tamron lenses could be gimbal lenses, and that's where they would be great. Yes, I agree. Or street photography lenses. Honestly, I get the feeling like the Canon, Nikon, and Sony has pushed up prices so that students have fewer options. And this is where it would be such an advantage. Like I said, if you're starting up and you haven't got much funds, students, this would be fantastic for, to be able to go out and buy a couple of lenses for $600. You know, or even if they could only afford one at the beginning, they could choose their favorite focal length, you know, 24, 20, 35, and only pay $300 is fantastic. Let's keep going down. Guy with the camera said 70 to 180, 2.8, 815 grams. Yeah, well, there you go. See, that is a gimbable weight. You could stick that on a gimbal. And I would easily run around with that on a gimbal. I've got multiple gimbals. I could have this on a gimbal as well as my 28 to 75. I often run on a gimbal the 28 to 75 as well. This would be an amazing gimbal if you wanted to have a longer focal length. You know, like blow out the background, have some nice bokeh in the background at 2.8. Because remember, at 2.8 at 180, you're going to blow everything out anyway. So, yeah, I mean, at that sort of weight, and also how good is that for travel? You know, like when I'm coming to the States next year in February, it makes a massive difference if you can put lenses in like that rather than having lenses that are much heavier, because your carry-on baggage is so expensive, or you can only take so much carry-on baggage. I think we're 7 kilos or something. So that really can mean the difference of being able to take a lens and not being able to take a lens. So I agree with you. That is a great feature. Sydney Image said, let's discuss the X-Pro 3 LCD. I'm going to get onto that a little bit later. Oh, someone just gave a donation. Let me just say thank you. Kevin, thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate that. The 20 mil is 349 US. The 70 to 180 is supposed to be under 1,000, which is, like I said, which is fantastic value. If they do that for around that price range, it's certainly a no-brainer for me to get it. That's for sure. Guy with the camera said, I've got the 17 to 28, great small lens, but sometimes I want even smaller, and that's where the 20 comes in handy. Yep, I can understand that. G'day, Steve. Good to see you in here. Kevin, how would you compare the 70 to 180 to the Sony 70-200 f4? Well, that's like I'm saying, Kevin, I'll test that for you. When I get the permission to get this lens, I'm not sure when I'll get it here, because they're still saying sometime early next year. When I do get it, I'll test it against the 70-200 f4 for you. Robert's just saying hi. But does the barrel come out when you change the focal length? Well, that's what I don't know yet. I think it probably would have to, but we've got to wait and see that. That's one thing I don't know yet. That's okay though, because I don't mind that. What you do is when you put it on a gimbal, you focus with it. See, these lenses are so light that you focus with it halfway out. If you're using something like a Moza Air 2, you can then zoom in all the way or zoom all the way out, and the motors on the gimbal will take that difference in pressure, and there's no wobbling or anything like that. So that's really not an issue with a weight, a lens that's sort of around that weight. It's only a problem if you're dealing with something like your 24-70 or your G Master I'm talking about, or your 70-200 G Master. If they move at that weight, it could be massive. So yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know whether that does come out yet or not. What else have we got? I agree the size and weight of the Tamron will be worth it. Just get the A7 R1 R4, yeah, and put it in crop mode. Exactly, you can. And that would be a great lens for that, because then you've easily got that over 200 mil if you put it into crop mode. That's the great advantage of the A7 R4. Photo Plus is underwhelming, people, as George is saying. Everybody was across the street at the Sony event. That's sad. I wonder how many people they took away from the Photo Plus due to the fact that Sony was over there. It probably has made a massive difference to the show, which is a bit of a shame, isn't it? So obviously all those people that the Sony would have been there, but it depends, I suppose, what time you're there, because a lot of the Sony users may go to the Sony show and then they may go to Photo Plus. But it's interesting that you say that. Test the 20mm prime, David. Like I said, I probably will test them all, Carl. Gerald says, love the 17 to 28 Tamron. Great buy, in my humble opinion. I agree with you, Gerald. The Tamron 70 to 180 will sell like hotcakes. I agree with you too. I think it will as well. I think it's going to be an amazing image quality, and it just finishes that holy trinity. It's a 67mm as well, so you've got the same filter thread right the way through, and that is such a big advantage. David, is your t-shirt a hint? Does the new Sony A7S pronounce be in New York soon? I love it. I bought this when I was in New York City a couple of years ago. That's quite funny. I will be coming back to New York. It's a pity I couldn't make it over when I was in January, but I just ran out of funds, so I couldn't afford to fly over as well to New York. I would have loved to have got over that side, but I will come back over there. Gerald is doing great images. He's just said that he's starting to do great images with his 17 to 28 on his A7 R4. We've seen those. Tamron will need to start doing more DXs for the Nikon Z50 now. I'm sure that will happen as well. That's why the Tamron lenses are so hard to get though, guys, because they're supporting multiple cameras, different lens mounts and things like that, and they're becoming very, very popular. I mean, like the 70 to 200 lens that they produce for Nikon, for instance, is superb. They really are making excellent glass now, Tamron, and I think it's up on par easily with what Sony are producing in optics. They really are. They're getting better and better, just like Sigma are as well. But the 20mm 2.8 looks very good, replacing the 17 to 28. G'day, Photomiac. John said, I haven't been able to shoot with my 17 to 28 and 2.8, but hoping to get a cruise in 40 days. You're going to use it there, are you? And you're obviously saying you're going to get the 70 to 200. Ben Ashford, bloody YouTube not giving me notifications. Yeah, I know, it never does. Really appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up, guys, because it does let people know that we're live. because you just don't get notifications. When will the primes be able to be ordered? I'm not sure. It would be fairly soon, though, I would think. So it shouldn't be long at all. Go with the camera said, I use the 35 2.8 interchangeably with my 28 to 75 and would love the 20 as an alternative. Yep, I can totally understand that. Thank you so much for the donation, Kevin. Really appreciate that. G'day, Aaron. Good to see you here. Are you at Photo Plus yet? Or are you just about to go? Robert said, yay, mum, man. Not sure what it means. Gimbal weight. That's a new term. Yep, I've just made that term up. You can now put that in the dictionary. Gimbal weight. I did think that when I said that. I thought, that's not a real word, but it's a pretty cool word. I like the Weebill S. Yeah, they're a nice gimbal as well. I just have a tendency to really love the Moser gimbals, Nevac, and the Phaotech is also pretty good too, but my favourite gimbal is definitely the Moser Air 2. I would like to try the Moser Aircross 2 though. I'd love to have a try of that as well. Creative Films just saying, sup, what's everyone? Guy with the camera said 70 to 180 has a telescoping design for sure. Yeah, I think it probably will. I would say that's the case. Internal focusing would be awesome. Now, they are saying that the 70 to 200 is going to have a totally new focus mechanism that's going to be extremely fast and things like that. And I would believe Tamron in what they've said, because everything they've said so far has been true with what they've said about Tamron lenses. So I would believe what they're saying. Like, they already have great autofocusing in their other zooms that they've supplied for Sony. So I would expect the 70 to 180 to have excellent autofocus, but just wait and see. But they have mentioned that in one of their announcements, that it has got a brand new focus mechanism inside. Let me just check down here before we move on. Since I already have the 70 to 200 GM, the Tamron will make me jealous, but I doubt I'll sell it to get it. Yeah, look, it's hard. I mean, the 70 to 200 is a beautiful lens. It is a really beautiful lens. I don't think I'd sell it unless you had the need to sell it. If you hated carrying the weight around with that lens, and you didn't need the 200 that often, it may be worthwhile to do that. But like I said, I've got the 70 to 200 f4 version, so for me, it's not that big a deal to sell it. If I had the GM version, though, I probably wouldn't sell the GM version for this. You'd lose too much money probably doing it. And I'd probably try and save and buy this as an extra lens, that if you wanted to travel light, you could, use this as a second lens. What else? That's about it, I think. All right, so let's go on to the next story. Let me just put down here. We're going to go into the Sigma 1.2. I've just got to show that. What are we, 29? Oh, it's actually 29. It's 30 minutes, actually. Let me go back. All right, so the next one is just the... and just before we move over, I just wanted to show that size again. So you can check the size if you're interested in looking at how the difference in that this is. If you look against a G Master, it's huge. It's even a big difference if you compare it to the F4 version. But again, you haven't got stabilization and things like that in it that you have to understand. Let's look at this. This is the Sigma 35 1.2. I just wanted to show the size of this. This is the difference, I suppose, too, if you're dealing with getting faster glass, how much bigger the glass actually has to be. Also, I really do wish that Sigma would design lenses now for the Sony mirrorless. I'm really waiting on them doing that instead of just bolting on. Basically, all they're doing is they're just bolting on the MC11 adapter that you see here. But I have noticed, I've tried this lens in the camera shop. I just tried it in there very quickly, and it was beautiful. Incredibly sharp. And like a typical Sigma lens, built like an absolute tank, would last you a lifetime. Very good build quality and things like that. So, it's absolutely stunning. I mean, I would love to take this out one time and see if I could borrow it and review it for you guys. But it does look like a really nice lens. But you just have to be wary of the size that this thing is. It is massive. But but you are getting a 1.2 aperture, which is incredible. Like I said, I've always had a lust for an 85 1.2. The only one that's really out there that's got autofocus is the Canon lens that's out there, and I'd love one day to try that. But this was gorgeous as well. I mean, if you do like the 35mm focal length, I've found Sigma to be really beautiful in the use. Like they focus very, very quickly now. Even adapted lenses, like I borrowed the 135mm, and that was on the MC11, and that was super fast. The quality of the results you're getting with the Sigma lenses now are easily on par with anything that Sony are producing with sharpness. I know some people argue about that, and they'll say that the Sony lenses are sharper, but I'm only going by my real life usage. I don't shoot charts, brick walls, things like that. I'm just talking about how the image looks to me when I shoot a model or a bride or something like that. The Sigma lenses are easily up to anything that I've shot within Sony. So it really just depends on whether you'd like to have, like a Sony native lens, or whether you'd like to buy an adapted lens. But there is nothing in this range that you can buy that's the 1.2 that will have autofocus that's native on Sony. So this is a sort of unique lens, and good on Sigma for doing this. Like I said, we really are blessed at the moment with what's happened with Sony now. We have so many lens sort of options that we can go now. We've got Sigma, we've got Tamron, we've got Samyang, and all the other third-party lenses that you can stick on there as well. There's Tamron, there's Sony. We've got everything. I mean, we really are blessed now in what we've got. The only thing I think we really lack now is a wide-angle autofocusing lens, which I would love to get. Something in the 12mm prime 2.8 or faster lens would be amazing. I'm sure it will come, but it's really the only thing we're lacking at this stage. But this lens, I think, looks really beautiful as long as you're prepared to carry that weight around, because it is massive and heavy, and that's one thing that you've got to understand if you're dealing with that sort of thing. I'm going to keep moving because we've got a lot that I want to get through, because we are partly the Canon show today. Let's go on to the Canon story. What's 34? 34. So the next story I wanted to talk about was the Canon 1D-X. This has sort of blown me away in a way. I'm surprised that Canon have done such a big announcement. Now, let me just explain a couple of things. That we know if you watch Casey Camera Conspiracies all the time, you know that there's always the Canon cripple hammer that comes down and hits him over the head, which you crack up when he does it. But there's one camera where they really haven't crippled before, and that is the 1D-X. Now, I know it's got a crop in the 4K 60, but it was sort of the only camera at its time that had 4K 60. It was cropped, I think, to 1.3 or 1.4. I can't remember the exact cropping, but it was the only camera that had that in there. Now, it probably had to be cropped at that time due to the processing power, and also perhaps the cards that were in the camera and things like that at the time may not have been able to cope with that 60p. So now that there's a new processor going on this, we don't know. It may not be cropped. I mean, we have to wait and see what Canon do in this regard, but it may not be cropped. But this is one camera where they haven't cropped before, and they probably do that because this is their sort of, their flagship camera if you're dealing with SLR cameras. And so they haven't basically hit this with the cripple hammer before. If you think about that, this camera was, 3 or 4 years old, I think, and the technology it had in at the time was amazing, but you pay for that technology. There's a few things about this, and I'll come up to the specs in a minute, that this camera that doesn't have IBIS, though, so we know that it doesn't have IBIS. And I was talking to Gerald about that yesterday. We had a discussion in the photography and videography school. I don't think that's an issue at this stage with the usage of that camera, because the lenses, this is targeted directly at the Olympics, and that's exactly where they've targeted this camera at. The lenses that they're going to be using in the Olympics, they're all going to be stabilized lenses, and the lens stabilization in the Canon cameras works wonderfully. I've used them myself, and it is absolutely amazing how well it works just with camera stabilization. The other thing you have to consider as well, most of the sports shooting that they do is at high shutter speeds because they want to stop the motion. They don't want blurry shots of a runner and things like that, unless it's artistic. They're mostly stopping the action dead, so they're going to be using very fast shutter speeds. So IBIS in most of those situations is irrelevant really in a camera like this, and you've got it in the lens. So I think that's probably going to be good enough at this stage. The other thing too about it is, but the video side of it, and we'll go through the specs in a minute about this, but the video sides of it, yes, it would have an impact on that. But you still do have the lens stabilization, but it's not going to be as good as, say, having IBIS and lens stabilization working together in video. But this is probably not a camera where you would be hand holding it doing video. This will be more a camera if you could put this, and my gimbal, the Air 2 that I've got, the Moza Air 2, would take the weight of this gimbal easily. It would be amazing if you could shoot 4K 60p with what the video functions of this camera has. And I think at release, if the specs are like they are and Canon don't do some crippling that comes in, I think this will be, because I don't think Nikon is probably going to match it, but we have to wait and see. But I think the Canon 1D-X Mark III is going to be the best hybrid camera that's available in the marketplace. Now, you're going to have to pay for that. Would I buy it? No, because I'm not going to pay $10,000 that this is probably going to cost here in Australia. But if you're talking about a flagship camera, it will be the best there is in the industry. I don't think I've got any doubt about that now. Now, it is a lot more expensive than the Sony A9, but I think that expense is justified because you're getting incredible video specs above what the A9 gives you. And I think that's worth the $2,000. If you look at what you're getting in the video side of this, to be able to shoot 4K 60, 422 RAW with Canon log internal, if they give that to us in full frame without the crop, even with the crop, it's still pretty amazing to shoot that internal because they have these CFast cards, CFast Express cards. If they can give you that internal, this is like a stills camera and a Canon C200 in the one camera, which is incredible. If you think about that side of it, that this is an amazing stills camera that is like a Canon C200 in the one camera. And that, to me, just blows my mind to think about that. Yes, I wouldn't like to give up my EVF, and that's the thing now. I love shooting with an EVF. But just imagine, and I'm going to talk about the EOS R next. Just imagine if they bring similar specs into the Canon EOS R that we know is coming, but I'll leave that as a discussion shortly when we go to the EOS R discussion. But let's quickly have a look at this camera. So, I mean, they're built like an absolute tank. Incredible weather sealing. They will last basically forever. Before I moved over to Sony, I shot with a D4S, and they have a similar build quality. Yes, they're heavy. Yes, they're big. But they're designed to work that way, and most sports photographers do love to have that. That's why if they're shooting sports, a sports photographer will immediately put the grip on because they like that extra large feel as well that the grips give them. Well, these have the built-in grip with them. But it's got some interesting things. It's got a brand new processor. They're saying it's going to be the Digic 9. That would hopefully give things like better ISO. It should give things like better dynamic range. Things like that. Because you think about it, they've got 4 years in between processors. So you would expect a huge jump in performance in what this camera gives you. It has something which is like I said, it's just blown me away in the fact that, they're saying there that this Digic processor produces improved images across the whole of the ISO range. The camera will be able to shoot 10-bit HEIF. Now, this is pretty cool because the big difference here is we're limited, like on Sony and other cameras at the moment, using JPEG, and JPEG is limited at 8-bit. And that can be a real bummer if you're dealing with, like I said, gradations in skies and things like that. Well, HEIF is the same format that the iPhone uses, and the JPEGs are pretty, I can tell you, they're pretty good from this. Now, they've now getting rid of JPEG, and they're going to use that HEIF format, which is a much better compression type format, but it's giving you the ability to do 10-bit compress files for the first time. So you're probably going to be able to shoot JPEG and have much better recoverability in the photos. Like you'll have probably much better ability to grade the photos, edit them, than what you can with the JPEG format at the moment being 8-bit. And it should look much nicer being in 10-bit than 8-bit. So that is a pretty big deal, and I'd love Sony to sort of implement that in their cameras here as well. A much more modern format as well. So that's really interesting. The video side of things, that I think they've really done amazing. It will shoot 4K resolution at 60 frames per second at 10-bit 422, and it's going to have Canon log internal recording. So if you're talking about the A9 II, and remember, you're going to get to the point where journalists, for instance, could shoot off clips of this in RAW at 4K 60p. You could even probably take stills from that as well, which is just incredible. Canon have destroyed Sony, the A9 II, if you're talking about video specs on this camera. They've absolutely destroyed the Canon A9 II. You would probably find too that this would have a better, it will have a better screen on the back, because it will be a true touch screen. And I noticed the other day when I went to a workshop at Yervant's workshop the other day, and I looked at the EOS R, and boy, the screen on the back of the EOS R was leagues ahead of what we've got on any of my cameras, including my A9. The screen on the back, the way it had the touch interface, the color, the resolution, and everything on the back of that LCD was way ahead of what Canon are producing. Like I said, the screen, I think, in the Sonys is 4 years old. It's about time Sony, and that's why I was disappointed, and that's when the A9 II came out. I said I was disappointed in the screens that were put on the back of the Sony cameras for the price we're paying. But for some reason, they're still giving us these dumbed-down screens that all you can do is touch to focus. It sort of has a little bit of lag. You can't touch through the menus. The colors and just everything don't look as good on the Sony cameras as what they do on the Canon. That's for sure. So it will have this 10-bit 422 Canon log internal recording. Autofocus is another interesting thing as well, because they're saying that they're using deep learning AI technology to track objects. So once you start to track objects, it's going to use the AI to track that. Now, we don't know how well that it's going to work yet. I mean, this could be just down on paper. We just don't know. But it sounds really interesting, and it sounds like they're really starting to think outside the box. We all know that AI is going to be a thing of the future, and it looks like that they're saying it's going to be able to accurately track the focus on every single shot. So we have to wait, but it's interesting. It's got much faster focusing, 28 times faster resolution or focusing than the previous version of camera that was out. Then we already know that focused very, very well. So this is going to be 28 times the resolution. And it says you have 525 AF areas at your disposal with this dual pixel CMOS AF system. 90% of the image sensor coverage. When shooting in full time AF and AE, you're going to get 16 frames per second through the viewfinder. That's the optical viewfinder. And if you want to shoot with the back screen, you're going to get 20 frames per second in live view, mechanical and electronic. So that's really cool. It's got dual CF Express cards. Now, you're probably going to need those due to the fact that you are pulling off that 4K 60p 10-bit raw footage, so you're going to need some massive cards and data transfer to get that off there. So that's why you're getting CF Express. Again, that's wonderful. I think that's amazing. I wish Sony and the A9 had moved to different cards. It's got, the buffer is nuts. It really is. It's saying here, the predecessor, which could shoot 170 raw photos, I believe this does around 390 or something like that, raw photos. And the JPEG will be unlimited. So the buffer is going to be nuts in this. It's got Bluetooth, GPS, and things like that. Body will be built like a tank. So what do I think about? I mean, look, it's interesting. I think if Sony had intended to blow out the other manufacturers for sports, I'm talking about sports, they're not going to do it if you're dealing with how this camera looks for the next Olympics. Now, the following one after that, I think this is probably the last of its kind. I think the next one that comes out will probably be a mirrorless version of this, and I'm going to talk about the EOS R in a minute. I think the next version will be a high-end mirrorless, and then they'll move on from that point. But this camera, and this is why I don't think photographers will have an issue of buying this camera, because this camera, if you purchase this camera, you would easily have this for 4 years. By that time, these photographers will have earned their money from this camera, and then it won't be an issue selling it at that period of time. Remember, these are high-end sports, wildlife type shooters that for money for them doesn't really mean much because it's their profession. So for them to be able to go onto this now, really, I think would be just, yeah, why would I get a Sony A9 or move over to a Sony A9 when I can shoot with this? And I think they've already got the lenses there in place, already the massive sports lenses that we know all work very, very well. So it's also got the amazing video part to this as well, and this AI tracking that's coming in with it as well as the C Fast Express cards. I mean, it seems to be amazing in everything that's there. Now, remember, we're only looking at specs yet. Now, they may cripple this in some way later on. But like I said, Canon usually have not. If you looked at what the 1D-X version 2 was, that was an incredible camera at its release time. It already had 4K 60p. So I don't think they will cripple this camera because they haven't done in the past. So that's just where I think this would be. And I'm just going to keep moving because I wanted to go over to the EOS R now. So let me know in the chat what you think about that, but I think it's pretty amazing anyway to be able to shoot raw 4K 60p and have the stills. Like I said, this camera is it's a sports photo camera and a Canon C200 in the same body, and that to me I think is nuts. Let's go on to the next one, which is the EOS R. What are we now? 48, 58. Oh, it's 49. I always do that. It's right near it. 49. All right, so let's look at this next one. I just thought I'd share this because there are rumors coming around that there's a new Canon IBIS and dual card slots are coming in a high-end EOS R model. Now, it wouldn't surprise me. I've heard, I think, who was it the other day was talking about this? I can't remember. It was someone talking about it I watched the other day. It's definitely going to be coming sometime next year. There's some rumors saying it's going to be coming out in the first half of the year. Others are saying it's going to come out later in the year. We know, look, if you look at the Canon lenses, there's a disproportion there. I mean, the lenses are incredibly expensive, the EOS R lenses. But also they are incredibly high-ended. I mean, Canon have done an amazing job with the EOS R. Their lenses are superb. It doesn't match the bodies that they've released at this stage, let's face it. But then again, I went to Yervant's workshop the other day. He now is shooting an EOS R. He's got rid of his 5D Mark III or whatever it is, or 5D Mark IV. He's now shooting the EOS R. Now, I think that's a sponsorship from Canon that he's done that. But his images were amazing. I mean, really amazing. So, the Canon EOS R, his results were outstanding. And I looked at them and went, wow, typical Yervant. They were just gorgeous. And that was all with the EOS R. So, you can't tell me that you can't shoot beautiful images with the EOS R. But it's let down by the dual card slots. That's the issue with the EOS R. It really is let down with that, and also this ridiculous cropping that you get when you shoot video. And the video is very soft. So that side of it, they've hit with the hammer really hard. Now, I think, look, there's no doubt that sooner or later that Canon are going to release a high-end EOS R model. Now, this could be the same sensor that they've just used in the 1D-X that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. It might be the exact same sensor. Now, just imagine if we do get the dual card slots in this, CF Fast Express or whatever you call it. It gets IBIS in this camera, same sensor as the 1D-X. and they fix all the things that they've done previously. And this is why I said to people before that Sony have to be careful about what they do in the future. At the moment, I'm not convinced, and this is where it upsets me as a Sony shooter, I'm not convinced that there's two things that can be happening with Sony at the moment. They can either be holding back to protect their high-end video cameras, where we're not getting 4K 60, etc. In the cameras at the moment. Like the new A9 II, honestly, we don't even get picture profiles in that, or it is ridiculous to think that, look at what the 1D-X Mark II has given it, will give you. If you look at how the A9 II has got picture profiles still missing. You can't shoot, you can't shoot log in that camera. So if I'm shooting like I am, and I want to do video like what I'm doing on tomorrow, I can't shoot log, because if I shoot log, my cameras aren't going to match. So I have to shoot standard, and I do shoot standard. So luckily for me, I do shoot standard. But if I did want to shoot log, if it was a really bright day and very contrasty, I might say I want to shoot log. I can't, because the A9 won't do it. It really gets, I get angry about it, thinking about it, because I can't see any reason why they don't give Sony users that. So this is the interesting part about this. So if they're holding back, so let me just sort of explain this. If Sony are holding back and they're saying we're not going to give it because we're protecting our high-end line, they could be in real trouble, because if Canon release an EOS R model that has all the features that I've just talked about in the 1DX, which is a possibility, Sony then may be in trouble, because for the first time they're going to be behind. And this may be the interesting thing, because I think for the first time in a long time, they're behind now. In the A9 now, I think is not the best of its class. It may be when we see the reviews. We have to wait when we see the reviews. But the A9 has always, and I've always been so proud of the fact that I've had the best camera that's available for shooting sports or whatever with the A9. And I think now at the moment, if all those specs come true and they don't hit it with a Canon, that cripple hammer, and I don't think they will, because they haven't before with the EOS, with the 1DX. The 1DX is going to be the cream of the crop if you're dealing and talking about the ultimate sports camera and the ultimate hybrid camera. Well, if they bring that out in something like this, what is that going to do to Sony? And I'd love you to talk about this in the chat as well, because it really is interesting, and I think Sony could shoot themselves in the foot. So are Sony holding back due to the fact that they want to protect the the FS7 and all these other cameras that are out there, and that's the interesting thing? Or is there a technological reason why they can't do it? Is it the body that's causing issues, that they just can't put 4K 60 in their cameras? And that's the interesting thing. But it still doesn't excuse them not putting picture profiles in the A9 II. Why on earth have we not got picture profiles in the A9 II? I just do not understand it. It's nuts, and I will never understand it. And I had to go about Sony about that ages ago, and I think that was a flaw. And I hate the fact that Sony may be starting to hold back, and I hope that's not the case, because I think if they do, it may hurt them. But so are they holding back because they can't fit it in the body? Well, if that's the case, they need to address that for something like an A7S III. They need to turn around and say, okay, guys, we have to make a bigger body. And I think Sony shooters would live with that. I would certainly live with that. If Sony had said, guys, to put 4K 60 RAW or 10-bit internally, shooting internally in the camera without it overheating, we're going to have to make a body that's the similar size to what the 1DX is. I would be fine with that. You don't have to buy it, but I would be fine with that. Let me know what you think about that, because I'd just be curious. But anyway, just imagine, and it's going to happen, and this is why I'm saying Sony do have to be careful that if they do bring out a high-end camera that has all of this in, if Nikon bring out a high-end digital mirrorless camera that has, all of these things, the 4K 60p internal, we know now that the Nikons focus very, very well. We noticed that they do great video. So if they don't hold back and they put all of these things into those cameras, where is Sony going to be then? And Sony have to be very, very careful about this. And like I said to you guys, I love Sony, and I do love Sony, and I'm not going to switch or anything like that. But I worry about it because I worry that if they leave it too long and then these other camera manufacturers jump in and give it, there may be a massive switch back. And that's what people have to be careful about, because video is becoming, Fusion particularly, is becoming a bigger and bigger thing in the industry. And Sony, for some reason, have been holding back. Sony, for some reason, are holding back on the viewfinder, on the LCD on the back of their cameras. Like I said, it's 4-year-old technology. We've got no picture profiles in the A9. We've got we haven't got the new EVF in the A9 either. But I believe that was a processor thing, so that may be just something that we can't help. But let me know what you think about these. I'd love to know, even if we're not in a live chat, what you think about it in the comments box below as well. Let me just quickly go over to this, because I also wanted to discuss this. What are we, 57, 42. It's just the Fuji X-Pro3 is another announcement I wanted to talk to you about today. It's funny, you either love this design or you hate it. I actually quite like it because I love that retro-y type style of look. So I really actually quite like it. I'd love this as a little hobby camera that I could just take around and shoot with when I've got plenty of time to just relax and shoot and things like that. So it's interesting that the design that they've come up with is really quite beautiful. I think there's a couple of versions that you can buy with this. It's a stunning looking little camera. I mean, it really is a stunning looking little camera. Again, I think Fuji, you've got to give Fuji something that they do think outside the box and they try new things. And that's one interesting thing about what they've done here. They are trying new things. They're thinking different. The LCD on the back, I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that though, but I mean, others are saying they like the idea of being able to sort of see the old retro look of what your film ISO would be, or the ASA. I mean, it's an interesting thing that then when you fold that down, it then becomes a LCD. I think that's a little bit awkward, but overall, I mean, I think for the cost of this, it's got a decent OLED panel on it. I think where were the specs on this? The price is going to be $17.99 United States dollars. That's for the black. It's slightly more expensive for the black. This DR. I'm not sure what the DR means. Oh, that's another, I'm not sure what that means, actually. I don't know what that means. Is that with a lens or something? But anyway, the base unit is $17.99. Canadian, it's going to be $2,399. So I think it's reasonably priced. There were quick specs, I think, over here. So it's got a 26 megapixel APS-C BSI CMOS sensor. The optical viewfinder is amazing, and you've got to give credit there to Fuji, because what that does, you can view it through the viewfinder optically, or you can get a LCD like we have with the Sony cameras, optical viewfinders. Now, the interesting thing is if you're doing it with optical, you can actually see outside of the area that's being shot, so you can sort of preempt. That's one of the great things about the optical ones, is you can see outside of the area that's being shot, so you would then know to move and take the shot when you need it. So you've got the choice of having optical or an EVF, which is just a switch. And that's amazing how that does that. So again, they're thinking outside the box. Some people don't like EVF, so you've got the choice of whether you'd like to use one or the other. I think that's genius in a way. Like I said, I'm not convinced about this fold-down screen that you sort of see here. I don't know. I think there could have been a better solution to that. It would have been better to just have it as a normal screen. But again, it'll be interesting to see what people are saying about that. Oops, I need to reduce that down. View, actual size. Let me just close the gallery. You can see there that it really is quite a beautiful camera. Like I said, I think it's quite gorgeous. It's very retro, but I love that retro look about things. And it'll be interesting to see how this sells. But I just wanted to bring it up to show that, there are plenty of options out there, and some of them are really interesting. A couple of downsides. It does shoot 4K up to 33. sorry, it does 4K up to 30p, and it's 200 megabits per second. So that's better than what we can get with Sony, actually. But it is time limited to 15 minutes, I believe. So that's a bummer. I mean, having the time limit still on these is a real bummer. But apart from that, you've got the 11 film simulation modes, which are beautiful. Now with that classic negative look as well. It looks like it'd be a really nice camera. Like I said, I'd love to have something like this as a camera. I could just relax, go out, shoot, chill a little bit, slow down, and just enjoy the experience of photography. So let me know what you think anyway in the chat. But I don't know how well it'll sell, but interesting anyway. At least they're trying something outside the box. So let's open it up to Q&A. Let me just put that down there. 2:30. So let's go to Q&A just to see what people have got to say. I'll scroll back a little bit and then we can talk about that. I'll have a quick look and see what people are saying about the Canon. Where will we start from there? Guy with the camera said the Sigma 35 1.2 is clearly in a league of its own. The sharpness and bokeh is the best of any 35. Yeah, it's an amazing lens. It really is an amazing lens. Where are we starting on the Canon? The Canon cripple for the 1D-X was not having C-Log. Which they're saying they're putting in this time, Brendan. But didn't they add that later on, Brandon, the C-Log? I can't remember. Maybe this is the last of its kind before the 1D-X mirrorless, and I think that is the case. I think that probably... I would not expect to see another D6, and I would not expect to see another 1D-X. Remember, it's been around 4 years, 3 to 4 years before they change those cameras. I think you might find the next Olympics will be mirrorless. Aldrich said, are any of you added on classes at WPPI? No, I haven't added any classes, Aldrich. I'm not even sure if I'll go to the classes. I might just sort of see what's happening in the hall itself. I don't know what to do about that, but yeah, we'll have to talk about that. But I haven't booked for any classes at all at this stage. Might push Sony to give us some picture profiles on the A9 though. Well, who knows? I mean, we could hope, couldn't we? Langston says, I'm kind of lame, literally going to WPPI for a mini vacation to hang out. That's what I'm sort of doing too. That's the way I'm looking at it. Canon would make me switch. Nikon better come with it. It's going to be interesting to see what the D6 has. They did a mini announcement, but they didn't announce really any features. So we've still got to wait to see what they have on the Nikon side for that. So that's going to be interesting to see what the D6 has to offer. MJ said away from the kids. I love it. Guy with the camera said, I'm interested in the 20 frames per second mode in live view. Will Canon have a stacked sensor? Well, see, these are the things we don't know. I mean, there's things that we still have to wait and see. We don't know if the sensor is going to be as good as what the A9 is, and that's the benefit of the A9 sensor. That stacked sensor gives you basically no rolling shutter. Are Canon going to be able to pull that off if they're dealing with 20 frames per second? It's going to be interesting to see. But then it's also interesting to see how you've got the mechanical and the electronic are able to do the 20 frames per second. So that may be a way of getting around it. I'm not sure. So they may be able to do 20 frames per second mechanical, but only with the back rear screen. These are things that we still have to wait and see. Gerald said, I'll wait for proof that Canon won't cripple this camera and the hype is all true. Too big, heavy and expensive for me anymore. Used 1DX in the past, maybe the A9 2S is coming. Yeah, it's, like I said, I wouldn't be buying that camera. It's too expensive for me too, Gerald. And I don't really want to be lugging around that weight unless I have to. But like I said, if Sony said to me, David, you know, we have to put a camera that size to get 4K 60p, I'd buy it and put up with it. I don't believe they will cripple it though, but that's what I'm saying at this stage. They haven't crippled much on the 1DX, but we have to wait and see. Iron Brown said, don't forget the 1DX is in the development phase. This may come out late next year. That gives Sony and Nikon time to respond. True. It's crippled with a mirror. I love it. It'll be out for the Olympics, though, Tony. It'll definitely be out for that. They won't miss the Olympics, which is, what, June next year or something? I think it's June. What else? George said, the Canon booth at Photo Plus had more models than Victoria's Secret runway show. One way to divert attention from the cripple hammer. Gerald says, I agree. Sony and Nikon have time to respond. Canon press release powerful, faster and rugged. Canon announces the development of the EOS 1X Mark II camera. Both Canon and Nikon need to drop bombs, period. Yeah, well, they do. They need to up their game, that's for sure. What else have we... I do hate the screens in the Sonys. Yeah, I mean, it's old technology. Look, you can't deny the fact that the Sony screen's now 4 years old. It's time that Sony addresses that. Whether they have all this stock that they're trying to get rid of and so they keep putting them back on each time, who knows? I'm amazed that the A9 II never had a brand new back screen. I really was disappointed that it had that same screen. Quibble says, deep learning demands more processing than conventional machine learning. The 1D-X Mark II must have good internals. Yep, I think that as well. Who knows what they've put in the processor side of that camera. Langston said, not to mention storage. Maybe Canon invented magical endless storage. You have to say bye-bye to Canon C100 and C200 models if this 1DX is released. It is going to be interesting, isn't it? Like I said, if that 1DX has all the specs that's announced, it is an amazing stills camera that is a C200 in the same body. And that, to me, like I said before, is nuts. It's nuts. Yeah, it's incredible. What else? Langston said, I mean, those cameras still have some advantages over this one, I would think, though. Not very up-to-date on my high-end Canon video cameras. I'm not sure which camera you were talking about then. Except for the Kodak and XLR, it has everything. Yep, there you go, it has. You're right, it just hasn't got that XLR or that Kodak that's in there. It's borderline C300. Matthew said, this is a fantastic release with 4K 60, 10-bit and internal RAW recording. I agree, Matthew. Langston says, not DCI 4K and a bunch of other stuff, but I do agree with you that it will poach a lot of potential C200 customers. I mean, I would prefer, look, if I was in that market, I would prefer to be shooting the size of that camera, the 1DX, over a C200. I think the weight of that and the way it looks and the ergonomics and stuff, I'd way prefer to be using the 1DX, and you've got a much, like an amazing still camera that's built into it. Langston said, definitely a compelling choice if it comes out as advertised. As a post-production guy, I wonder if it has timecode support. Yeah, we don't know yet, because then, holy crap, it would be kind of useful. I guess if you are more cinema-centric, you go C200, but if you are hybrid, definitely 1DX. Yep. Langston said yes, basically yes. It's a huge bump in capacity for a hybrid shooter. I was a Canon for 16 years, but the low-end camera stuff, Photomix says the A9 II is king if still shooting. Yep, it certainly is at the moment. But we have to wait and see how this is in still shooting, Photomiac. I only knew them for Andre Agassi. Oh, he's talking to someone else. They are not holding back. 4K 60 full frame is a very complex task. Even Panasonic won't be able to do that in their SH1. But they haven't said that it's going to be full frame yet. This is the thing that we have to wait and see. It may be cropped. We don't know. These are some of the things that have to be answered when they release the camera. So stay tuned for that. If it is full frame, there'll be no other camera out there like it. That would be incredible. Robert says there's going to be a war and bloodshed in the camera industry next year. It's certainly going to be an interesting year, that's for sure. Matthew said, I agree, David. Sony should have disabled Sony should have nothing disabled in the A9 II in regards to video. It is a pity, it's especially for picture profiles. I do not understand that at all. We need picture profiles. I'm going to sell mine. Chris K said, have a feeling Sony got a bit cocky. Hopefully, if the 1D-X3 is as good as it looks, it will shake Sony up a bit. And that is what I'm hoping. That is the thing that I'm really hoping a lot. That Sony may turn around and say, boy, we have had it on our own for so long, we're now going to have to start upping our game again. And that's what I'm really hoping for. I want a bigger A7 anyway. Long Rider said, I was at Photo Plus today. I saw the new Canon RF 70-200. It's no bigger than the 2470. They're doing amazing things with lenses, Canon. The RF lenses are amazing. I also love the front controls of the way that they work as well. They really are. So like I said, if they brought out a high-end R version, it could be a really compelling camera. Leslie says, I think the body is the size is the problem. And you may be right. That might be why that Sony just aren't bringing anything out. Gerald says, I agree. Sony needs to abandon their fixation on small body and give us what we need in video performance or get left behind. I don't need an A9 II as much as a really good video like the A7S III. I agree with you, Gerald. This is Canon's second camera with 4K 60. We have still to get one from Sony. I agree. It's a poor effort. Steve said, David, Sony will listen to you. Watch out for the next update on the A9 II. Chris said, Sony needs to start having a consumer and pro body. Keep the current body for consumer full-frame cameras like the base A7 line and have the pro body to the R and the 9 series. It'll be interesting tonight. I'm going to a Sony show tonight. They're probably going to give me the evil eyes when they look at me, but I only have Sony's best interest at heart. Like I said, I'm worried that if they sit back for too long, the others will catch up or overtake, and that's not good. Sony have always been at the forefront of the innovation, and that's the interesting thing. If they start to let that slip and start to rest a little bit or think we're going to hold back, it could hurt them, and I don't want that to happen to Sony. I want Sony to innovate. Robert said, Sony is a consumer electronics company and they need to use all their old tech from 4 years ago. Well, I'm not sure if that's what's happening because I can't understand why we've still got those old screens on the back. I really don't understand that. Fuji is the street photographer's king. Yep, street photographers love it. I know that. Casper said Sony number one. It's Casper's birthday. Happy birthday, Casper. Okay, Sony number one for you, Casper. Happy birthday, mate. If Fuji entered into the full-frame competition, especially with their colour science, firmware updates and innovation, they could be scary. I just don't think they want to go into that marketplace, though. It's too crowded already. I think Fuji are in the right space. They've got micro four thirds, and then they've got medium format. So I think Fuji are doing the right thing. I think they probably should stay that. We don't need another player probably in full frame at the moment. Guy with the camera said, Fuji seems to have a very close system. Third party hasn't jumped on board, so you're stuck with those lenses. Yeah, that's the issue with it. It really is. We've just about caught up. Tim said, David, the Sigma 35 1.2 was made specially for Sony mirrorless, and the 45 1.2, 2.8 and 1424. What I meant though by that, Tim, is the design still looks the same. It still looks like it's had that bolted on end put on. It would have been interesting if they could have come up with a completely new design. That's the only thing I was saying about that. Apart from that, yeah. So that's about it. Like I said, reminder, guys, if anyone is in Melbourne and going to the Sony Print Awards night tonight, please pop over and say hello to me. I'll be there. I've got stacks of reviews coming up in the coming days. Can't wait to share some of those with you. Thanks so much for a great chat today, guys. It's been fantastic. What have you got in that coffee, David? Fuji has APS-C and not... No, I didn't mean micro four thirds. I meant, yeah, APS-C, that's it. Yeah, sorry. I meant to say medium format was what I meant there. What else? Hi, Room, where were we on the Tamron Lens talk? Well, that's discussed way back. You can go back and view it. It's still there. Jess said, Jared Poland, now a Sony A9 photographer, answered with some doubt in his video about Canon 1D-X Mark III specifications, and he actually had some good arguments. Yeah, I did watch that, Jess. It's interesting. I'm not sure, though. Look, I don't know whether Jared is sponsored. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm holding judgment on the things that I read myself and stuff like that. So I don't know about that at all. I'm only going by what most people have sort of read and what I've reviewed about the camera. I agree, we have to wait and see what's announced later on. Jared may be justifying his switch to the A9 that he's just done. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. So it's interesting anyway. So sorry, today hasn't been really just about Sony, but we haven't had much news over the last week or so with Sony, apart from the Tamron Lenses. That's really been about it. So it's been a bit light on the Sony news today. Hopefully next week we'll have some more Sony news. If not, there's always other things that we can discuss as well. So I hope you've still found it entertaining anyway. If you're a nerd like me, like Robert said, thanks, entertaining show for all those camera nerds. It's still being an interesting discussion as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love my Sony gear and I still love my A9. I just would like Sony now to start innovating again and start to push the boundaries a little bit more. And hopefully that, with great releases that are coming out shortly, hopefully Sony will start to do that again. Like I said, get rid of that stupid back screen and things like that. So I'm hoping that's coming in the near future. And that's about it. All right, guys, well, have a great weekend. I'll let you know how I go with my video tomorrow, doing video for the first time as a full-on videographer. So I'll let you know how I go that. That's going to be really interesting. I'll probably talk about that next week or something with you all and let you know how I go and how I found it working with another photographer. And not being sort of rushed by doing Fusion. So that's all for now, guys. I'm going to go and get some lunch and a coffee in my New York accent. If you haven't joined the Photography Videography School, please do. I'll put the link down below. That's a Facebook group that is an expansion of my YouTube channel and Aaron's YouTube channel. And everyone else that's basically in the chat is in there as well. So please join us there. Love it if you could give us a thumbs up because that also supports me. Remember, unlike a lot of YouTubers, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I do this all off my own bat, so I would love it if you could give me a thumbs up and share the video. Apart from that, everyone, I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye for now.